Considering the last video game adaptation of a D&D board game I played was Tomb of Annihilation, an unholy abomination, you can imagine my hesitation to give Lords of Waterdeep a shot. Now, I had known for a while that Lords of Waterdeep existed and was even fairly familiar with the type of board game, being one where you try to outsmart and maneuver the opposing players to achieve victory, that it was, but I never had all that much interest in it. That's likely due to the fact that, if I'm being totally honest, I'm not exactly a huge fan of board games. Like, I love tabletop gaming, but most board games just don't do a lot for me. I don't have anything specifically against them, mind you, and am typically happy to give them a try or two, and then I get precipitously bored. Coupled with the fact that the video game adaptation was originally made by Playdeck for mobile devices before it was ported to PC, and my trepidation only grew stronger. More than anything, I only eventually caved and bought it because, as silly as it sounds, it was basically one of the only D&D games I hadn't played to that point. It just felt wrong to have spent considerable time playing games like Heroes of the Lance and Shadow Sorcerer and not having tried Lords of Waterdeep. And wouldn't you know it, I'm glad I rectified that. Lords of Waterdeep is a wonderfully crafted little game. It is not, however, a willing subject for a video essay, primarily on account of the fact that basically everything takes place on this one screen. This is the game. There are no fancy cutscenes or hidden secrets to uncover, it's just you, the board, and whomever you're playing against, whether they be AI or real. So that means this video is gonna have to be a little different. For the sake of not making things confusing, the majority of footage shown here is just going to be me playing one game so that you might follow along if you're so inclined. I'll be highlighting things and cutting in other videos to make my point as appropriate, but we're just going to play a nice round as we talk about what makes this game sweet. If there was any gaming video of mine that you can certainly listen to as a podcast, it's this one. But before we get ahead of ourselves for the uninitiated, let me take but a moment to run through the purpose and goal of this game. The ultimate goal of Lords of Waterdeep is to accumulate favor by way of completing quests. Whoever has the most favor at the end of the game wins. Completing quests necessitates that you have the requisite resources in order to do so. Resources, being both gold and henchmen, comprising fighter, rogues, clerics, and wizards, are earned as kickback from completing quests, but primarily by stationing your agents, of which you have a set amount to assign depending on the turn of the game, at various waypoints across the board. Placing an agent on a station grants you the resources and takes up a spot, meaning that if there aren't any other spaces, no other player can utilize that area. Additionally, you can earn intrigue cards, which can be used to stifle other players' efforts or grant yourself boons in much the same manner, and you can even build additional areas to grant more avenues through which to earn resources. At the start of every game, you randomly take on the role of one of the masked Lords of Waterdeep, granting you bonus favor related to the types of quests you complete. Got all that? Because that's pretty much as succinct as I can make it. There are two expansions available, Undermountain and Skullport, which beyond adding new lords, buildings, and intrigue cards, bring an additional mechanic called Corruption, a double-edged resource that lets you wreak general havoc, but hurts you in turn the more of it you possess. For the purposes of this video, I played with the Undermountain expansion, but not the Skullport one. I don't hate the Corruption mechanic, but generally feel that the game plays just fine without it. What makes this game so fun is that at its core, it's a test of wits, foresight, and strategy. Everyone is playing on the same board with the same opportunities, and you know everyone's resources and capabilities at any given time. That means when you make a move, not only are you doing so for the immediate benefits that it brings, but also to thwart your opponents. You're shacking up at Blackstaff Tower not only because you want the wizard piece it grants, but also to prevent your opponents from doing the same. With everything laid so bare, with everyone knowing what just about anyone else might want to do at any given time, you have to strategize with how valuable any single move might be to you, while also considering how to best stop your opponents from winning. And everyone is running through this type of calculus, and when someone does something that you want to do, I swear to God the plinth is never not taken because clerics are a premium unit. It is so frustrating in the best way possible, as it forces you to reconsider and pivot to other options. It's a constant game of trying to outsmart your opponents with the resources available to you, and when you successfully swoop in to make a move that lets you complete a quest and screw over someone else, it is a euphoric feeling like you wouldn't believe. In contrast to most other board games, I've yet to get bored of this format. Every game can feel so dramatically different in the way you're expected to be both proactive and reactive, to say nothing about how your opponent's playstyle and the lord you're assigned can change things further. It's fresher than a new suit or cut grass, and I love it, damn it. That this gameplay within the context of a Dungeons & Dragons game is so fun was a real surprise to me. What makes most D&D games, whether it be DDO, Icewind Dale, Neverwinter Nights, or whatever, so great, at least from a gameplay standpoint, is how they faithfully adapt whatever rule set they're based on. That's what I look for in any D&D video game, at least. There is no rule set in Lords of Waterdeep. There's no stat lines, dice rolling, or even class abilities to be found. To that end, the other portion of what makes D&D video games great, the story, is completely absent as well. Beyond the idea that you're trying to advance the means of whatever lord you're playing as in Waterdeep itself, there isn't even really the concept of a story. And yet most everything about this game is still entirely engrossing. As I said, the gameplay ropes you in with the way it forces you to try and weave a web of opportunistic deception, and even without a story, with the way it's rooted in Waterdeep, it all still feels like D&D. And that is where I think Lords of Waterdeep exemplifies the value of something that doesn't get talked about all that much when regarding D&D games. The overarching D&D aesthetic. This is D&D in name only. You could remarkably simply convert this into a game that doesn't even sniff the D&D license. Instead, however, it uses the virtues of the setting to take its already fun systems to another level. Being placed in the confines of a known location and introducing recognizable figures such as Kelvin Blackstaff, Mert the Moneylender, and Xanathar the Beholder leaves Lords of Waterdeep as a far more interesting and welcoming game than it would be otherwise. It gives the player something to connect to and recognize as their favorite tabletop game, D&D, easily making up for the way that it doesn't deliver the traditional elements one would expect from a digital D&D experience. This sort of aesthetic is so powerful because we all love D&D for a lot more than rolling dice. Rolling dice is great, don't get me wrong, but getting lost in the world and coming to love and hate its inhabitants can be just as fun when presented in the proper way. And in the case of Lords of Waterdeep, that aesthetic outright carries the experience. Maybe you don't have the chance to tangibly impact a combat situation or story outcome, but everything you do feels like Dungeons & Dragons. This is probably best shown in the quests themselves. While you don't get to literally defend the Tower of Luck or install a spy in Castle Waterdeep, I'm sure you can see yourself doing those things in a traditional D&D game, or have done things very similar. Even the city of Waterdeep itself makes complete sense as a hub. If you're not as big a Forgotten Realms nerd as I am, just know that Waterdeep is the perfect city to pair with the gameplay. Waterdeep is the urban sprawl of Faerun. Outwardly, it's a hotspot for merchants, adventurers, and scholars that has nearly everything one could hope to find on offer. Inwardly, it's run by a secretive collection of lords, each of whom have their own interests and ideals, even if, for the most part, they've all got the best interests of the city at heart. Hell, the fact that the one thing you don't know about the other players at your table is what lord they are, only revealed when you tally the final score at the end, serves as some legitimate integration between the gameplay and aesthetic. I'm sure you could have constructed this game around figures from other areas in Faerun, whether it be a place like Baldur's Gate or even the 10 Towns to the north, but Waterdeep works perfectly for exactly what this game is. The essence of the city is shown in the intrigue cards that you play. On one hand, you've got blackmail, skullduggery, and most every other form of untoward action conceivable, while on the other, you've got joyous celebration and menial governmental tasks, all of which are certainly being undertaken on a daily basis in a town like Waterdeep. It almost feels like they built the game around the aspects of this city. I have no idea from where the developer started, whether it was with the gameplay or the aesthetic, but they unquestionably found a way to make them shake hands. They even got all this down to the fact that there is no real music to this game. I know. Probably incredibly weird to hear me praise a game for not having music on account of the fact that I'm typically the guy singing the praises of video game soundtracks as liable to butter your biscuit and steal your significant other, but the way in which the only real sound is ambient noise you would expect to hear in the city itself only drives the aesthetic further. And I mean, look at just how good the board looks in-game. It's crazy detailed and helps to make you feel as if you're actually playing the original. It feels like a board game as it should, even if you're playing on your phone or computer. both the original board game and digital port received pretty rave reviews, in no short way because how firm a handshake that was. Lords of Waterdeep almost feels like a meal at a restaurant. The gameplay itself is the food, while the setting and aesthetic is the ambiance. Yes, good food is still good food, even if it's eaten in dreadful surroundings, but the presence of the ambiance can take something from good to outstanding, and that's exactly what happens here. I say all of this to make the point that even if Lords of Waterdeep isn't likely the type of D&D experience you would be likely to expect from a D&D game, it hits the right notes all the same. The gameplay is addictingly fresh, and that it is a D&D game at all only serves to make it that much better. It's fairly cheap, especially when you consider how much replay value this game has. It usually can be found for somewhere around $15, and I implore you not to make the mistake I did in diminishing it just because it doesn't seem like the type of game you would like. There is more than meets the eye here, and you're cheating yourself if you don't let yourself experience it.